In what could possibly end the longest conflict since the Second World War, President Trump is all set to dial President Putin to find possible peace options to end the Ukraine war. What will be the final give and take is the big question. Israel launches fresh strikes in Gaza over delay in release of 59 hostages after ceasefire talks collapse. Israel says it will now deal with Hamas with greater military might as all hopes fade over a possible ceasefire that could end fresh waves of violence. A day after Tulsi Gabbard raised concerns over persecution of minorities in Bangladesh, interim advisor Mohammad Yunus junks Gabbard's claims and slams the US spy chief, calling her comments as misleading and not based on facts.
Undocking confirmed. Freedom is free of its moorings.
Hours to go for touchdown for astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore as the team of Crew 9 begin their earthbound journey. The world awaits the splashdown. Prime Minister Modi wishes Sunita Williams and looks forward to hosting the astronauts soon. It seems it's the end of the road for Sudiksha Konanki, the 19-year-old Indian-American student who has been missing for almost 2 weeks in Dominican Republic. Sudiksha's parents now ask the police to formally declare her as dead. The top story on India Global today is from Bangladesh. For months, the minorities in Bangladesh, including the Hindus, have been at the receiving end of persecution. And with no end in sight and worse still, no state support to ensure timely redressal. And finally, a day after Tulsi Gabbard, the US spy chief told NDTV that the persecution is a cause of concern for her. All that Yunus's government is now focused on doing is proving Ms. Gabbard wrong. In a desperate attempt to ensure that there's no bad PR, there's no bad optics. Take the case of Chinmay Krishnadas, who's been in jail since 24th of November with no bail hearing. And there are many more such instances, viewers, where one can see the persecution that the minorities in Bangladesh have been at the receiving end of, with no possible hopes of getting redressal. So why is it that Mohammad Yunus is only focused on junking Ms. Gabbard's claims and statements rather than doing something about it? Before I go any further, I want to play out that soundbite where Tulsi Gabbard spoke about this in an interview with NDTV's Vishnu Som.
The long-time unfortunate persecution and killing and abuse of religious minorities, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Catholics, and others, has been a major area of concern for the United States government and, of course, President Trump and his administration. The talks are just beginning between President Trump's new cabinet coming in and the government of Bangladesh, but this continues to remain a central focus area of concern.
Mohammad Yunus has a lot to handle. He needs to, in fact, fix a lot of things. He needs to fix the economy that's been in the doldrums since the student revolution last year. He needs to ensure reforms. He needs to conduct elections. But why is it that the focus has been on mainstreaming Islamists, denying justice, and in fact proving Ms. Gabbard's statements wrong when there are photographic and video evidence proving what she said on NDTV? Let's get you those big questions that I'm going to now put forth to my guests joining me today on India Global. Some of those questions on your screens right now. First, Dhaka is focused on slamming criticism over minority safety. Why is it that they are doing that? Second key question, is Yunus' government now covering up violence against minorities just by saying and making those comments that Mohammad Yunus is and his government is? The third question, will Trump administration respond to Yunus' denial? That's a very important aspect of ensuring there's justice. And finally, will India take up the issue of minority persecution with Dhaka? We've said about this in the past. Would we take this up going forward, especially when there's been a complete denial that's come in from Mohammad Yunus' government? Before I get in my guest from Dhaka, which is Muqtadir Rashid, who will be joining me in a minute, let me now get in Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti, who's a former secretary of MEA, former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh as well. So you heard some of those comments that Tulsi Gabbard made, and you also heard some of those complete denial that Mohammad Yunus's administration has come out with. It's far easier to deny than to actually give justice to minorities, isn't it?
The Yunus regime has been in denial right from day one that any attack on minorities, etc., particularly Hindus, is not communal but political. In other words, while accepting that there have been attacks on Hindus, he has tended to describe it as political. That is, they were seen to be Awami League supporters. Hence, the attacks took place, and hence it was political. Later, of course, it was proven that these attacks were also purely communal in many places, something which they acknowledged. But they tried to cover it up, and that process is still on, because ultimately it impinges on the image of the country, and everybody sees Bangladesh, what is happening in Bangladesh, as not as something that is not expected. That some people who are anti-Awami League and pro-Islamists are running the agenda in Bangladesh. That is the reason why I think the Yunus regime has been in denial about some of this violence against minorities.
Do you expect the Trump administration to take this up? Because, it's not just one-off instances. This pattern has been going on since 5th of August. As I said, take the case of Chinmay Krishnadas. He's not had a bail hearing for over 2 months now.
Well, that Chinmay's case is certainly a very blatant case of discrimination, because surely, I mean, if you have the rule of law, his case should have come up for hearing, at least for bail, and I mean, bail could be denied. But I don't see why he has been targeted. I think he has been targeted because of the Islamists. It is the Hifazat al-Islam which filed the cases, all with the support of the government. I believe he was targeted because he was able to organize the Hindus for demonstrations, and also, fill them with a sense of, courage that, that they are also citizens of Bangladesh. And why should they leave? Because most of the Islamists want the Hindus to leave the country so that they can have a 100% Muslim country. At least some sections of the Islamists believe that that is their goal and agenda. So I think that is one case of discrimination that should not, that is continuing, I must say. And I hope, something is done to at least,
Indeed.
To give him some legal recourse.
Indeed. Let's put that to Mr. Rashid joining me from Dhaka. He's one of those guests who's open to reason and also open to facts. So Mr. Rashid, respond to the comments that have come in, completely slamming Tulsi Gabbard's statements, where she did say that the persecution against minorities, including Hindus, is worrisome. By just slamming her and junking her comments, Bangladesh is doing a huge disservice to its entire minority population, which has been at the receiving end of the persecution.
Thank you for having me here. I don't think, I definitely appreciate Tulsi for making serious concern about Bangladeshi minorities. And of course, she has a right to express her concern. But at the same time, I would say that what kind of reaction Dr. Yunus government so far taken? For my, as far as I know, government is serious about any kind of attacks taking place, any place across the country. So they are taking very serious step in any case when any such reports are coming. But sometimes some cases are definitely exaggerated, and we are concerned about this. I think we should allow American team, if there is serious concern, they will come, they will visit, and their embassy is here. They can also send the report from Dhaka to Washington, D.C. to what kind of persecution is going on and what are really.
Are you saying no persecution has happened? Do you say that?
No. I never say that. I never say that. Since the very beginning, there are a number of reports are coming, and we have seen.
So instead of acting on them, why junk the messenger? Why in fact accuse the messenger? Instead, you should be focused on the message and work towards fixing it.
Of course, and of course we should work on it. It's not only duty of one country; it's a duty of the global community. We should come up.
No, but she's talking about Bangladesh. So where is the global community here?
No. If there is an issue, of course the global community has to say something, because it's a global family nowadays. If there is something in India, of course the USA and Bangladesh will say about this. Similarly, when there is something in Bangladesh, of course you have some concern.
Mr. Rashid, I'm not interrupting you, only so that you can make your point, but it doesn't seem very lucid right now. The fact is, Ms. Gabbard said in no uncertain terms that the persecution of minorities, including Hindus in Bangladesh, is a cause of concern. The response of Mohammad Yunus's government is saying, well, those are comments lack facts. You are just denying what the world has seen since 5th of August.
No, it's not 5th of August. This is the mistake. It is started back in 2016 when IS sympathizers started attacking minorities. When IS sympathizers attacking Buddhists, Hindus, Christians, that point of time, there was a concern. And
Mr. Chakravarti, respond to what Mr. Rashid is saying.
Revolution began in 1947, and that is our history, unfortunately. When Hindus had to leave what became East Pakistan, and in 1947, I think the Hindu population in Bangladesh was around 28, 29, or I don't know, around that figure, 30% maybe.
It's about less than 9% now.
It is now less than 9%. The question is, why did that happen? Because, of course, the after effect of the partition, but later on in 1965, during the East Pakistan days, many Hindus left because they were forced to leave, because they were persecuted. There was no doubt about it. But that was Pakistan's policy. After 71, we hoped that this would end, but I'm afraid it did not. It continued, although the numbers came down. I have served 6.5 years in Bangladesh and received so many thousands and thousands of petitions from Hindu families saying, please save us. You know, they want to take over our land. And so that has continued under almost every government, including the Awami League government, I would dare say, although it came down during that period, because the Awami League was perhaps more sensitive to the fact that the Hindus generally voted for them. And that is the reason why the Islamists are so angry with the Hindus. And that is why they want to punish them. That is a fact, cannot be denied. And that is why you are seeing this kind of persecution. Every day there are reports.
Indeed.
And I still get reports on my phone from people in Bangladesh saying this has happened, that has happened. And I'm afraid it cannot be hidden anymore. And it has to be recognized.
It is not, absolutely. It needs to be recognized. It needs to be addressed.
Some bluster, that does not happen.
Absolutely, sir. It cannot be hidden behind bluster. It needs to be addressed. And that has to start by at least acknowledging that there is a problem. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of India Global. At the end of the day, you can't just junk comments. You need to work towards those very serious cause of persecution that is taking place against minorities in Bangladesh. I'm going to slip into a very short break, come back on the other side, talk more about Sunita Williams and her earthbound journey. Their return was delayed due to multiple technical issues, but now it seems that she's back soon. I'm going to get you more on that after this break.
The UK's first human heart transplant has been completed, supported by the British Heart Foundation.
We were a noisy generation, but it might be something quiet we do that becomes our greatest legacy. Leave a gift in your will to the British Heart Foundation and fund groundbreaking research that could help save millions of lives. Search BHF Wills.
Few of us ever look after our ears as much as we should, even when hearing loss can interfere with everything that makes us, us. Relationships, passions, independence. But you can keep living the life you love. All the laughing, dancing, and connecting. When you personalize your hearing care with Hidden Hearing, discover how it's possible to keep being you. Hidden Hearing. Your hearing is our expertise.
The war in Ukraine continues to put children in terrible danger. Homes, schools, and hospitals have been destroyed. Families are still displaced from their homes. UNICEF is providing warm clothes, boots, and blankets to keep children and babies warm. £32 could help provide warm winter clothes for a baby or young child. Search UNICEF Ukraine or text WINTER to 84902 and help make a difference for children today.
And here's the dining room. There's a lovely garden, plenty of room for a trampoline. It's beautiful.
Our relationship with money is formed from a young age.
Nice to meet you both.
Well, we've seen a house we really like.
That's why we're here to help you take control and find a mortgage that suits you, whether you're buying, moving, or looking for a better rate. Barclays. Make money work for you.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are finally heading home after an extended 9-month stay on the International Space Station. Their return was delayed due to multiple technical issues with Boeing's new Starliner crew capsule, forcing NASA to transfer them to a SpaceX capsule instead. This report tells you the entire story in detail.
NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore were meant to spend just a week in space, but stayed nearly 9 months due to delays with Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. Now, NASA has confirmed that a SpaceX Crew Dragon has successfully undocked from the ISS, finally bringing them home. After an extended mission, they'll soon set foot on solid ground again. NASA astronauts may be pushing human boundaries in space, but their paychecks remain firmly grounded. Unlike corporate jobs, they don't earn overtime, just a fixed salary. Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore hold GS15 rankings, the highest in the US general pay schedule, with base salaries ranging from over $125,000 to $162,000 per year. For their extended 9-month stay, Williams and Wilmore are expected to earn an additional $93,850 to $122,000. But here's the surprising part. Former astronaut K.D. Coleman recently revealed that despite the extreme conditions of space missions, NASA's daily allowance for incidentals is just $4. That means over 287 days, they'll receive only $1,148 extra, bringing their total earnings to somewhere between $94,998 and $123,152. But after months in space, their mission will go down in history as the longest first crewed flight of any spacecraft. While their salaries may not match the risks, for astronauts like Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore, the true reward isn't in paychecks, but it's in the journey, the discoveries, and pushing the limits of human spacecraft. With Rhythm Arcadia, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
With bated breath, everybody is now waiting for the two astronauts to in fact come back. David Ariosto, who's an author and journalist, joins me to talk more about what really lies ahead in terms of their onward journey and how could it be the next couple of days for them, given that they've been in space much longer than what they intended to be. David, thank you so much for taking out the time and joining me on India Global. Let me start by asking you, there are some reports that indicate that the initial phase of them entering Earth could be a very tricky phase. Talk to us about this when they enter the Earth's atmosphere.
Sure. Yes. I mean, it's anytime you kind of come out of orbit into back into Earth, it's never the simplest of things. Typically, what will happen when the ISS is traveling around the Earth's atmosphere, it's going about 17,500 miles an hour. And so that's kind of why you feel that microgravity. You're essentially sort of falling around space. And so when the craft starts to deorbit, it's about a 17-hour process. And it will start to build up plasma. In the past, that sort of has represented a communications blackout in which, basically the radio waves in which ground control is communicating with those on board is shuttered out because you just simply can't communicate through that high heat and plasma. This is essentially a fireball in the sky that will eventually slow down. And the conical shape of the craft itself is actually meant to sort of blunt itself against the atmosphere as it slows down. Eventually, parachutes will deploy, and this thing should eventually just touch down. But there is this communications blackout period, at least that we've had in the past, where everyone's just sort of holding their breaths in terms of making sure that the mission is successful. Now, I will say that the International Space Station has been occupied since November of 2000. So in some ways, this is old hat for NASA and for those aboard the ISS. But it's never really that case when you're coming back from space.
Of course. Which brings me then to ask you about the fact that when the splashdown does take place, they're coming back to gravity, something they haven't been used to for the last 9 months. How is that likely to impact them, and how much time is it likely to take them to acclimatize to gravity on Earth?
Typically for missions that are in under about 20 days, the rehabilitation process is about 7 days on Earth. That said, they've been up there for roughly about 9 months now. Now, NASA has had astronauts and those aboard the ISS, certainly Russian cosmonauts, in excess of a year. So this is not something that's wholly unfamiliar. That said, the human body is just not evolved to live in space. It's an environment that's unprotected by Earth's atmosphere, and you mentioned the microgravity and sort of the havoc that plays in terms of bone density and plasma shifts within the body. The heart itself actually sort of changes shape a bit, and the heart actually works a lot less hard because of the lack of gravity. And just like any muscle, if you work it out less, then it just becomes weaker. And so when they're on Earth, astronauts will go through a rehabilitation process that involves both strength training, conditioning for hopefully to restore some of that bone density, but also cardiovascular exercises to sort of ameliorate some of the conditions of the heart. Beyond that, they'll likely have experienced some vision problems given the fluidal shifts in their cranium, and also some balance issues. So there's a sort of a battery of rehabilitation efforts that will take place. Chances are this will go on for much longer than a week, given how long they've been up there.
Absolutely.
But hopefully everything's okay.
Indeed. And how soon do you think they could be prepared? Because an astronaut wants to go back to space, right? So that's what their longing in life is. That's what their calling is. How soon do you see them making another mission? How soon do you think their bodies, when mentally and physically, would be prepared to undertake another such mission?
Well, there's a long list of astronauts that want to go and that are sort of in line to go. So I would imagine that after this type of mission, there's a few others ahead of them if they choose to return. This type of length, it would be interesting to see if they did indeed return.
Okay.
But you mentioned an important point, though, that astronauts are sort of a self-selected group and they want to be up there, and so that does sort of undercut some of the psychological effects of being sort of in isolation for that period of time. That said, those effects can't be mitigated or can't necessarily be discounted. So, as we sort of look to those rehabilitation efforts, the mental health aspect is certainly one to be paying attention to as well.
All right, let's leave it there, David. Thanks so much for joining me on this edition of India Global. The world is waiting for Sunita Williams, and so here in India, we as well. On that note, a quick break. We come back on the other side to what could be the biggest story of the year unfolding. President Trump set to call President Putin. More on that after this break.
This is Harvard India Conference. We talk about what India will be going forward. The fact that you chose to call your company Bharat, the fact that you chose to come back at a time when Indian healthcare and biotechnology industry was not where it is right now. The fact that starting a company wasn't so easy in India. And the fact that the STEM industry, the scientific R&D industry in India was not where it was almost 30 years back. What got you here? Because as I said, a conversation with a woman entrepreneur should start with about what it is like to be a woman entrepreneur in India.
It's this journey for us, for me, because I have to mention to you that all the introduction that was made with all humility, I would have to share it along with my executive chairman, Dr. Krishna Eller, with whom I traveled this journey for the last 40 years. And it was way back in 1986 that both of us, with our 2-year-old daughter, moved to the United States. And then came a turning point, or kind of a thought process in me that I was asking Krishna this question every now and then. What do we do to India? Because we left the country in 86 and it was almost 97, 98 by then. I said, Krishna, is this why we came to the United States? Or is there a larger meaning behind this? So I said, I'm ready to go back when you are ready to follow me. So that's how it all began.
What made you name your company Bharat?
Bharat was coined by me because I did all the paperwork. I said my background was in economics. So all that helped. So I used to do all the paperwork, filling all the forms to the banks and the government offices and everything. I mean, everything is paperwork ultimately. Even today, if you still have to type it on your systems. I called it Bharat because I said, in my own thought process, I said, I belong to India. I grew up in India. I took all my initial years of growing up, my education, my children, my parents, the upbringing, the value systems, until college that I was there. I said, I could not think of a better name because I know Bharat stands for many, many, many more things glorious in the past as well. So I said, it cannot be called anything else but Bharat.
How life works.
This is India Global. What could be now the next big story could be probably the biggest story of the year that could change one of the longest conflicts in the world since the Second World War. President Trump is set to now call up and speak to his Russian counterpart, President Putin, very soon to possibly find ways to end the Russia-Ukraine war that's been on since February 2022. It will be interesting to see what will be the final cost of this war in terms of the gains and losses for both Russia as well as for President Putin and of course for President Trump as well. Remember, all leaders, that is both the leaders, are looking to probably create some sort of good optics that they can take back to their people and of course make a case for how this was a great deal on the table. For President Trump, he's keen to in fact look at a broader bilateral relationship between America and Russia, and for that he needs to tide over this particular war, end that, look at some way to move beyond and of course have a broader relationship with Russia. For President Putin, how much territory will he get to keep is going to be an important point. Will there be withdrawal of US troops from frontline bases in the Baltic regions is again an important aspect for him. Will there be an end to the intel sharing between US and Ukraine that has greatly helped Kiev in this war? Is going to be some of the aspects of this broader contours of which of course are yet to be finalized. At the end of the day, of course, both leaders need to be seen to be coming out as winners out of this, and that's the message that they want to send to the world. But is it temporary or is it going to be a permanent settlement is really the key question here. Okay, on your screens are some of those graphic points that really tell you what's really at stake, both for President Putin and President Trump. As I said, what matters to both of them is what is on your screens. Let's get Nick Harper joining us live from Washington, D.C., covering what is set to be one of the biggest stories unfolding right now. Nick, always a pleasure to have you on the broadcast. This could really be potentially a call that could end the war that's been going on for over 3 years.
Yeah, it certainly could do. It's interesting to look at the dynamics going into this call, hearing from Donald Trump, who seems to be quietly optimistic about how things will go, most recently posting on his social media platform, Truth Social, that he was looking very much forward to the call. He also said that many elements of a final agreement have been agreed on, but much, he said, remains. Now, he didn't exactly detail the specifics of this, but we do know from his comments over the last few days that land or territory will be discussed in this call, as will power plants. It seems going into this call that much preparatory work has been done by both sides. Really, it seems agreeing to what may be the conditions as part of this peace agreement. And it seems implicit in this that the territory that Russia has seized from Ukraine over the last 3 years will not be given back to Ukraine. Russia wants to hang on to it, and it seems, at least from Donald Trump's comments so far, that he seems to be on Russia's side in terms of that. There has been comments from Washington and from the Pentagon suggesting that Ukraine's borders will not return to where they were before this conflict began. And then there's that issue of the power plant, which is likely to be the Zaporizhia power plant. It's the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, seized by Russia back in March 2022. Ukraine would love to have it back, but Russia, I imagine, will want to hang on to this. It's likely to be a bargaining chip in these discussions. What's unclear is what will happen out of this call. Will both sides, the US and Russia, agree to a 30-day ceasefire, or will they be able to push things even further forward, perhaps getting to the point of some sort of draft document that could then be looked at and agreed on by Ukraine, which could perhaps be the framework for a final ceasefire deal. This call, we're told, is likely to take place between 9 and 11 local time. It's just gone 9 a.m. in the morning here, so really that call could be happening anytime soon. We're likely to hear from the White House in the coming hours exactly what was discussed between the two leaders.
All right, Nick, let me leave it there. Of course, this call is going to really decide which way the Russia-Ukraine war goes from here. The questions that you raised are valid, and let me put that out now to Professor Andrew joining me. This is an author and professor of political science joining me from America itself, from New York, I'm told, who will talk about some of these aspects. As I said, the nuclear power plant being one aspect, it contributes about 25 or did contribute 25% to Ukraine's overall energy supplies. The fact that there is a ceasefire on the table that Putin rejected last time because he wanted a permanent settlement. The fact that there are also forward bases in the Baltic region that President Putin would like to, for some sort of a troop withdrawal to happen from America's side, could be some of those areas that this call would touch upon. Do you expect that, Professor Andrew, or do you think this could just be early days and there could be more such steps before a final settlement happens?
Well, I think we're a long way off from a final settlement, and we need to think about this, as your previous guest pointed out, and as you've mentioned, in terms of two phases, an immediate ceasefire and then a longer-term, more durable solution to this political conflict. And I'm afraid I have to tell you that I'm not optimistic about either. First of all, in terms of a ceasefire, President Putin has no incentive to agree to such a thing. The Russian military is winning on the battlefield.
Yes, they have the military momentum with them, yes.
Yes, very much so, not just in Kursk, but in the Donbass region more broadly. And, you know, as long as he's winning on the battlefield, he has two incentives, one of which is he doesn't want to appear to be the impediment to peace. On the other hand, he wants to drag this out as long as possible so that his forces can make as much progress as possible. And then in terms of the longer term, and this is the scary bit, the Russian Constitution claims that those 4 eastern provinces, or oblasts as they call them, are an inherent and intrinsic part of the Russian Federation. And Putin is not going to compromise on that. On the other side, President Zelensky has said he's not going to compromise on that. Those are parts of Ukraine, period, end of story.
Indeed. Unfortunately, Mr. Zelensky is nowhere now in the equation anytime soon and unlikely to be. But here's what I think, and I'm going to ask you on that. One is that both these leaders have invested their political capital. So they want to be seen to be coming out as winners in this equation, right? President Trump as well. So he would want that the largest takeaway is that he's been able to end this war in some way or the other, keep going now, move ahead and move on with life, right? So what do you think could be the best outcome for President Trump from this call?
Well, I don't see a good outcome. I mean, there'll be a lot of smiley faces and a lot of kind of metaphorical backslapping, and everybody will be kind of happy, but he won't get what he wants because Putin doesn't have, the incentive structure is not there for him to compromise. And on the Ukrainian side, there's no incentive structure to compromise.
Okay.
Other than the Ukrainians are losing the war. I mean, they want out. They want some resolution to this in the short term, medium term, and long term. But I don't see, I know Trump fancies himself as the master of the art of the deal and so on. He's going to be looking for some simple transactional arrangement, and it's not there.
Finally,
the reality is,
finally, do you see that in some way that it could come down to Mr. Zelensky not agreeing to some terms? Maybe the terms could be such that it will not be palatable to Ukraine and that it would probably come down to how Ukraine is the impediment to peace?
I think that's the way, you know, Trump has approached this. He's browbeaten Zelensky and he's tried to seduce Vladimir Putin because the U.S. has no leverage left with respect to Russia. But I think that strategy it's run its course. I mean, I don't think there's any way forward. There's not much more you can do to beat up the Ukrainians to get them to concede things. And there's not much more you can do to seduce or woo President Putin on the other side. I don't think, despite the fact that he fancies himself the master of the art of the deal, I just don't think there's a deal to be done here. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Too many people have died. Too much destruction has been levied, but I'm not optimistic.
Too many resources in terms of military and men have gone in, so probably it's time to find out some sort of a settlement. Professor Andrew, always a pleasure to have you on the broadcast. All eyes now on which way that phone call goes and whether this will pave the way for some sort of a settlement or not. I'm going to slip into a break, come back and talk more on the other side about the other war that continues, which is the one in Gaza. Stay with us. We come back and talk more on that.
Love a good deal? Try Free to Play Deal or No Deal, only at Tombola. There's up to £1,000 to be won. Get that good deal feeling. Open for fun.
We all love a bargain, like these flatmates who switched to Vodafone and are now paying less for their full fibre broadband, which means they can still stream 2 shows at the same time. But for less. Still gaming with mates, but for less. He's behind you. Reliable full fibre broadband for less from Vodafone.
rebel in the comfort of home. IKEA, the wonderful everyday.
I gotta be me.
What in here?
Sauce up your sandwich with Walker's Heinz ketchup flavour crisps.
With Post Office Over 50s life cover, enjoy peace of mind knowing your family will receive a guaranteed payout when you're gone. UK resident 50 to 80, your guaranteed acceptance. No health checks and from just £1.15 a week. Plus free 24/7 GP access with the health and wellbeing benefit. Purchase and receive a £125 gift card for amazon.co.uk, Tesco or M&S. Call Post Office on 0800 171 2211.
Who do I trust for business insurance?
If you need business insurance, join nearly 1 million customers who trust
Quidco gives you cashback every time you shop on over 5,000 brands. It always pays to Quidco. Sign up and start saving today. Visit quidco.com.
Whatever you need to ask about cancer, Macmillan's free support line is just a call away.
Hello, Macmillan.
Whether it's money,
am I going to lose my job?
Getting on with life,
Can I still go abroad? Get insurance?
or just need someone to listen.
How do I tell them?
Our specialist advisors are here to help as often as you need them. Whatever you need to ask, cancer, money, life, call us now on 0808 134 1000.
It feels good knowing that your future's in hand. Evlo can offer you a loan from £1,000 to £15,000, whether it's for home improvements or for some of life's big moments. Evlo looks beyond your credit score and always takes a case-by-case approach. Visit evlo.co.uk to get your conditional decision in minutes.
Works, how life works.
The other war that continues to wage in the world, that is the one in the Middle East. And Israeli military has said that it's carrying out extensive strikes in the Gaza Strip, with some reports indicating that the death toll could be as high as 400. Those, of course, are death tolls by the Gaza Health Ministry and not independent reports. The Israeli Defense Forces have said that they are attacking what they call our terror targets that belong to Hamas. The strikes are continuing, and the IDF has issued fresh evacuation orders for many areas. Hamas says the US bears full responsibility for this in Gaza. After the White House confirmed that Israel has consulted the Trump administration before carrying out these airstrikes, this is the latest set of attacks that are taking place in the wake of Hamas still holding on to 59 hostages with no pathway for their release. There's been a breakdown of talks. What next? This report tells you in detail.
Gazans woke up to a nightmare early on Tuesday as Israel started pounding the enclave with airstrikes, shattering the ceasefire deal reached on January 19th. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he ordered the strikes because of a lack of progress in talks to extend the ceasefire. Israel alleged that Hamas had repeatedly refused to release hostages. On the other hand, Hamas accused Israel of unilaterally overturning the nearly 2-month-long ceasefire agreement. Reports suggest that the operation is open-ended and expected to expand. Meanwhile, Washington voiced support for Israel's actions and said that it had been consulted about Israel's latest operation.
Phase 1 of the ceasefire has ended, but Israel and Hamas have not been able to agree on a way forward for Phase 2. Hamas wants Israel to completely withdraw from the enclave before it returns the hostages. There are nearly 60 hostages that remain in Gaza. Israel said that it wants to completely destroy Hamas's governing capabilities and it will not withdraw until it does so.
According to Gaza's health ministry, the fresh strikes have killed hundreds, many of whom women and children, and injured an equal number of people. Gazans have expressed their disbelief and despair, saying that the strikes have been more intense than ever before.
كان لنا امل انه توقف الحرب وعسبت انها تنتهي المصيبه اللي احنا فيها، لكن بشوف الحرب رجعت من اول وجديد. فمش عارف يقول لك إنه الله إيش بدنا نعمل. هذا اللي بصير فينا هذا جحيم.
The strikes will return to fighting in a 17-month war that has killed almost 50,000 Palestinians and reduced most of Gaza to a rubble. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report for NDTV World.
There are 59 hostages that are still with Hamas. There is no pathway as to when they will be released. Hamas says that it wants Israel to completely vacate the enclave before they release those 59 hostages. That, of course, is a deal breaker, isn't it? Which is why I ask this, that is the peace deal now off the table? Is Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, facing a crisis of confidence because those families of 59 hostages who've been with the Hamas terror enclaves for almost 17 months, they need answers. They want their loved ones to come back. And will Donald Trump now focus on this war after he is done with the Russia-Ukraine war? Because there's expectation he may find some sort of a negotiated settlement there. What about this war in the Middle East? Phase 1 of the ceasefire happened. Some hostages were released, but phase 2 is where things seem to be stuck. And in the midst of all this, we also talk about the role of Iran. Let's get an international human rights lawyer joining me from Tel Aviv. She's the CEO of International Legal Forum and senior fellow, joining me on the broadcast, Mr. Arsen Ostrowski. And I also have, in fact, Sophie Fullerton, who is joining me from Istanbul to talk more about, well, what are the options on the table here? Let me start with you, sir. The fact is, as things stand right now, Mr. Arsen, that there is no deal on the table, and Israel is now looking to completely ensure that what it feels are those terror enclaves that continue in Gaza are eliminated. The question is, what happens to those 59 hostages?
Look, thank you for having me, and that's a very good question. I think to a large extent what happens next is in the hands of Hamas. It did not have to be this way, but effectively Israel was left with no alternative. The ceasefire essentially ended March 1st at the end of the completion of the first phase. So what we've seen in the last 2.5 weeks or so is essentially a de facto ceasefire and a period of some 2.5 weeks of calm for Hamas in Gaza. However, without any hostages coming out. Now, that situation, that kind of status quo is certainly unacceptable to Israel. Hamas could have accepted a number of times the proposal which had been put forward by US Special Envoy Witkoff, which had included a release of half the hostages at the beginning of the renegotiated phase and half at the end, which would also include the period of Ramadan and Passover for Israelis. But Hamas repeatedly refused to, and so Israel was essentially left with no choice. So under international legal parameters, in the situation where Hamas is continuing to hold hostages and is refusing to engage in good faith negotiations, Israel had to exert military pressure, which any other sovereign nation would. At the end of the day, from Israel's perspective, this can all end tomorrow. The military operations can end. The aid can resume, provided Hamas agrees to Witkoff proposal and releases the hostages. It's that simple.
Those hostages, those 59 of them, in fact, some of those visuals we can play of the families of those 59 hostages seeking release of their loved ones and, of course, protesting that the focus should be on getting those hostages back. It's a fact that Hamas is treating these 59 human beings as bargaining chips. That is what it comes down to. Sophie, what's the way out here? Do you see President Trump now investing his political capital here? Because at the end of the day, beyond ceasefires phase 1, there seems to be no progress going forward.
Well, Trump touts himself as one of the most pro-Israeli presidents we've had, and he's going to continue along that line. So whatever Israel chooses to do, you should expect the U.S. to toe the line in that essence. So if Netanyahu or the administration wants to continue to do warfare on the Gazan people, you should expect this administration, the Trump administration, to continue this as well. I would also argue too with the Trump administration, they are seeing their own interests at play here. We have seen in the past, for example, that Trump has this idea of having some of the land from Gaza in U.S. control. So there's these other aspects of this conflict that are happening at play behind the scenes. The other thing I would say too is that this conflict is not going to cease until Netanyahu also chooses for it to cease on his end as well. It seems a lot of times when Netanyahu is experiencing some type of political turmoil within his own personal cabinet or within his own person, we see an onslaught of violence. So, for example, Netanyahu was facing some issues within his own...
You think these are deflecting tactics? That's what you think they are?
Yes.
Mr. Arsen, respond to that. Mr. Arsen, respond to that, that maybe that's the reason why those families of those hostages are protesting, because they feel that they are being treated as just that, bargaining chips.
No, I mean, look, I think to suggest that this is some kind of deflective action is quite frankly grossly offensive and really just minimizes the barbaric role of Hamas, an organization that murders, maims, rapes, tortures, starves innocent civilians, and as we saw just a few weeks ago, returns the bodies of Jewish children in coffins. So to suggest there's some kind of deflection strategy is quite frankly an outright lie and offensive from all across Israel's perspective. The country is united in terms of bringing the hostages back and making sure that there is no role for a terrorist group like Hamas to play in Gaza. That is a position that is also supported by the US and by the EU, mind you, as well, and others who deem Hamas a terrorist organization. And to that extent, there is complete consensus here in Israel. Of course, there are differences in terms of how best to achieve that, in terms of obviously the painful consequences that have to be made to help rescue the hostages. And as we've seen, Israel has been forced to release hundreds upon hundreds of convicted terrorists and murderers with blood on their hands to retrieve the bodies of even our hostages.
I agree. The fact is that what Hamas is setting as a precondition for release of those 59 hostages is a deal breaker. The fact that Israel should completely exit the enclave, because the fear is that they would regroup once again. They would once again create that terror network, and there's no way that Hamas will keep its side of the bargain, which is that it will exit and which will not, of course, ensure that the terror network starts again. So, Sophie, what's the way out here?
Is there a way out in this sense? I would argue again that we're seeing one power have more of an authority over another power. In the sense, we're talking about a country that is striking hospitals and schools and mosques during Ramadan. You can't ignore the fact that 400 civilians were killed last night, including children. So that should not be ignored in this sense. And we should always acknowledge the power dynamics that are at play here.
Nobody's ignoring that. Nobody's ignoring that, Sophie. My report says that very clearly, but let me just clarify that those are not independent reports. I must point that out for the benefit of my viewers. These are reports and numbers that have been put forth by the Palestinian side. These are not independently verifiable statistics. Having said that, it is the month of Ramadan. It is a holy month for the practicing Muslims in that region. But the fact is that the deals that have been, the conditions that have been set in by Hamas indicate that there is no movement forward. So, Mr. Arsen, explain to me that what is the way forward that Israel has decided? What's the roadmap? It can't keep coming out with these strikes day in and day out, because the government is accountable to the families of the hostages.
Look, the way forward is really very simple. This can all end tomorrow if Hamas releases the hostages. It's really that simple.
No, they're not doing it, right, sir? They're not doing it.
I understand that they're not doing that, and therefore they cannot continue with the status quo for the last 2.5 weeks, including, by the way, during Ramadan, there was a period of quiet. Aid was going in, but no hostages were coming out. And by the way, in a couple of weeks' time, we're coming to the period of Passover, which for Jews is one of the most holiest periods of the year as well. At the end of the day, the only language it seems that Hamas understands is one of force. Now, it's unfortunate that it has to that situation, but as long as Hamas refuses to negotiate in good faith, refuses to accept the proposals that have been put forward by the United States and encouraged by allies in Europe and elsewhere, and continues to hold hostages captive, Israel is left with no alternative. No other sovereign nation in the world would stand for these circumstances.
Indeed. Final 30 seconds, Sophie. Let me give you that final 30 seconds, which is that Hamas is a terror organization. How much can you really negotiate with a terror organization? And that is what it looks like when it comes to the Israeli side.
I agree in the sense that no country should have to negotiate with a terrorist organization, but should civilians be caught up in this? No. And that is going to be my final argument here, that there needs to be a consensus that human rights and dignity are put at the forefront here, even when it comes to warfare and conflict. So that should not be ignored as this conflict continues to move forward.
Indeed, I have to leave it there. There are two sides to this, but the one and biggest thing that one needs to remember is that Hamas holds 59 hostages right now since the last 17 months, using it as a bargaining chip. But the fact is, this cannot end the way it is going on right now. A negotiated settlement will have to be created, and probably that's where President Trump will have to focus. On that note, completely timed out on this edition of India Global. Thanks for watching.
What are you so happy about?
I've just made a claim. We could be owed thousands.
My claim group?
Yeah, the cars we bought on finance, well, the lenders could have charged hidden commissions. It's dead simple to claim.
Hey, I had 2 cars before we met.
Go to My Claim Group. You could be owed thousands in hidden commissions from cars you bought on finance since 2007, even if you can't remember the details.
Done.
Simple, eh?
Go to My Claim Group now.
Claims made simple.
When I woke up, they said, Alyssa, you've got leukemia. We found out that the chemo wasn't working.
Cancer is still the biggest killer of children in the UK, but innovative new treatments could help beat cancer for more children like Alyssa.
I'm cancer-free now.
Text, call or search to give £3 a month and help build a new children's cancer centre at Great Ormond Street Hospital. So together we can save more lives.
Now I'm retired, I can spend more time with my grandson. I'm proud of him and want to help any way I can. Which reminds me.
Welcome to British Seniors, the UK's #1 rated provider of over 50s life insurance.
Hi, I'd like a quick quote.
No problem. We're proud to offer our seniors lifetime guarantee. With 100% of claims having been paid, we guarantee your premiums will never go up and that you'll speak to one of our specialists in the UK.
Well, that's good to know.
UK residents aged 50 to 80 are guaranteed to be accepted. Depending on your age, your loved ones can get a cash payout up to £10,000.
And that money can help with my funeral costs or even be used as a gift. I'll do it.
Plus, when you sign up, you'll receive a £135 gift card and free 24/7 GP advice and health services.
Thanks, Mum, for everything.
Be proud to protect your loved ones with British Seniors. To get a free quote today, call our UK team on 0800 158 552 or visit britishseniors.co.uk.
Our first year as a family flew by. And now, I want to make sure he'll be financially protected for all his birthdays to come. That's why I'm calling Smart Insurance.
Hi, how can I help?
Hi, I'd like a quick quote for family life insurance.
OK, you can choose a benefit amount up to £750,000 depending on your age.
That's great.
If you're a UK resident aged 18 to 64, you can apply with just a few health and lifestyle questions. For £250,000 of cover, the price starts at just £14.77 a month.
That's less than I thought. And could help my wife pay off the mortgage.
And with our Smart Family Guarantee, you'll have peace of mind.
That's good to know.
You'll also receive a 100% advance in the event of terminal illness and 10% cashback on your first year's premiums. That's the Smart Cashback. Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card.
Protect the life you've built the smart way. To get a free quote today, call our specialist UK team on 0808 141 5855 or visit smartinsurance.co.uk.
Taste the vinegar zing. Enjoy the barbecue tang. Get new Doritos and Minecraft movie flavors while you can.
This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Hello and welcome to the Southern View. I'm Veera Raghav. Lots lined up on the show this evening, including a special focus on the political face-off in Tamil Nadu. But first, let's take you through the headlines we're tracking this hour. In the Rania Rao gold smuggling case, the DRI tells the court that it has proof that the second accused, Tarun, a US citizen related to a powerful business family in Bengaluru, was closely involved in the gold smuggling. Strongly opposes his bail plea. A fresh row erupts in Telangana over poll promises. Again, BRS protests against Chief Minister Revanth Reddy, questions where the scooties promised to girls are. The Congress assures that all promises will be fulfilled once the government settles the financial mess left behind by the BRS. Presidents Vladimir Putin of Russia and Donald Trump of the United States hold a phone call this evening to discuss settling the Ukraine conflict. Could this be a landmark moment? Well, first up this evening, a quick update on that Rania Rao gold smuggling case. The DRI today told the court that it had evidence from Rania's gadgets and mobile phones to prove the involvement of the second accused in the case, Tarun, who's related to a powerful business family in Bengaluru and is a US citizen. The DRI told the court that Tarun and Rania were in Dubai on the 3rd of March and that Tarun had aided and abetted gold smuggling. It also told the court that there was a lookout notice against Tarun and that he had declared gold at the Dubai airport and was the one who handed it over to Rania. The DRI also said that it had found financial transactions